You are listening to the Fairways and Fundraising podcast, powered by Golf Event Planning, discussing charity fundraising and successful golf outings, along with tips and tricks of the trade. Now here's your host, Larry Battaglia.
Hello, and welcome to Fairways and Fundraising, powered by Golf Event Planning. I'm your host, Larry Battaglia. This is episode number 33. Thanks for listening. And today we have another Zoom remote session as we're still going through COVID-19 protocols and safety precautions. We have a good friend of mine for the last, I'd say, I know this gentleman now for at least 12 years. We met many years ago, and we'll get into that story as we get into our podcast. This gentleman is a partner at Getz Fitzpatrick in Penn Plaza, New York City. So we'll talk a little bit about the city and the COVID crisis. But most importantly, he is the trustee of the Herbert M. Citrin Foundation. And I want to talk to him about his philanthropy efforts that we've done together. A good friend of mine, Howard Rubin. How you doing, Howard?
Hi, how are you, Larry? It's good speaking to you virtually again.
Yeah, I know, and it's been a while. Usually by this time, I see you at least 3 to 5 events during the year. And obviously with COVID, many events have been on hold, especially the indoor events, galas, and things like that. But usually we would catch up at a couple of golf outings. So how are things with you and your family?
Well, as you know, my mother passed away last week, but
again, I'm sorry to hear that. It wasn't
COVID related, but my family's doing well otherwise. I think just like everyone else, COVID has thrown everyone for a loop, but we're coming back. And while things aren't, I wouldn't call them normal, people have adjusted, and I think I've learned to adjust to a new normal, and hopefully we'll be able to do the things that we were doing pre-COVID.
Yeah, and speaking of coming back and things don't feel normal, I'm sure, being a partner at Getz Fitzpatrick in the city feel and vibe is definitely very different these days.
Well, I mean, I not only am a partner in Getz Fitzpatrick, but I have a house in Long Island. I had a house in the city, which I have an apartment in the city, which I haven't used in 6 months. I haven't seen it, except for asking the doorman to look that it's still there. But yes, the city is not the same. I mean, my practice is heavily in the hospitality and restaurant industry. Those industries have been devastated. I walk down the street, and I feel in some ways I'm in a third world country. In some areas, there's just so much people who are either passed out or not in great shape. And it's depressing. It's depressing that New York City, which had the greatest culture in the world, is at a standstill. There's no Broadway, and there's not going to be Broadway now until at least June. There's no other types of sporting events that are live. And these are the things that people would come to New York for. So the tourism obviously is down, and New York thrived on tourism. So without tourism, it's hard for New York City to come back the way that we were. But I'm optimistic that this is going to pass, and that one day we're going to, New York's going to exceed, or at least be what it was prior to COVID.
Yeah, and we talk about coming back with some of these events and sporting events. Of course, you and I are big Giant fans. I'm not sure I'm looking forward to going to a game. I mean, at least yesterday they put up a good fight against the Cowboys, but it's tough being a New York fan these days.
In terms of sports, I mean, I'm surprised that football and baseball are able to do as well as they are. The NBA, had their players in the bubble, but they're baseball and football didn't. But it's important. It's important that people have outlets, and sports is a tremendous outlet. I mean, I know you would know that normally I would be doing maybe over a summertime, I do 15 charity golf outings. I'm doing my first charity golf outing October 19th. And the funny thing is I have a conflict. I have 2 that are scheduled that day. So
That's right.
I committed to one before. But it's not the normal. So in terms of raising money, and I'm very involved in helping charities raise money, there's a new normal, and there's new ways that has to be done, and they have to adapt. I think it's affected charitable fundraising more than probably almost any industry other than the hospitality industry.
Fundraising must go on for these organizations, and they have to really think about how they're going to continue to try to raise money for the great causes that they're driven for. And, you and I, Howard, why don't we go right back to when we met? It wasn't necessarily at a golf outing, but you had attended a golf outing and you received a foursome photo on a coffee mug that had our name on it, and you happened to be running a golf outing. So you gave us a call, and I remember meeting with you and Bob Mensch. And in the initial meeting, I remember you saying how you had all these incredible relationships and that, you were going to probably get between 8 to 10 foursomes on your behalf, and that you really had a small committee and it was really just you and Bob running it. And I just thought to myself, man, I'm not sure if I believe this or not, but let's see where this goes. And it's so true. You are so well connected, not only in the business world, but in the not-for-profit world. And we'll get into that side in a minute. But do you remember that that initial meeting that we had?
This is how I remember it. I was at a golf outing. It was one of the first golf outings I went to. I had a foundation, which I'll get into how that happened. And we needed someone to help us run an event that we were doing in Westchester, a golf event that we were doing for a charity that my wife was somewhat involved in. And I didn't know anything about event planning at all. So I interviewed you and two other companies. I found you because I had been to some event and you did some kind of photo thing. And of the three that I interviewed, by far, you had the best vision. I came away with the feeling that we were in good hands with you. And with the others, I didn't have the feeling. I felt I was being sold, that they just wanted a job. But I felt with you, there was a much better connection. So we hired you. What was the golf course in Westchester? Willow Ridge. Willow Ridge. And we exceeded their capacity. We had to take the golf course next door, Metropolis, something like that.
Apollonis,
that's it. I know it was some kind of Greek name. And it was an incredibly successful event. I didn't realize, how big it was going to be, and you did a fantastic job. We raised a tremendous amount of money, and it was the start of a relationship. And that whenever I did golf outings, and now the foundation was doing, a lot, you were my go-to person. You were my first choice, and I've never been disappointed since in any golf outing that we've done with you.
That means a lot, Howard, and especially coming from someone like you who now has been in the not-for-profit world for, well, I'm not sure if it's going on 20 years now, but I want to talk about how you got involved as a philanthropist from Getz Fitzpatrick as your law firm, but you also have this foundation now that you're a trustee, you and two other individuals, where you provide grants to various foundations. That is the Herbert M. Citrin Foundation. How did that all begin for you?
Well, as a lawyer, I always try to develop a close relationship with clients. I always prefer to have clients rather than cases. And I was fortunate over the years to have very close relationships with many of my clients, because I would be their person to go to, whether it was a legal issue, another type of issue, and we became good friends. And one of those people was Herb Citrin. Herb was a guy that was philanthropic in his own right, and decided at some point that he wanted, upon his death, to establish a foundation and make me and two other close friends of his, Jane McGimsey and Brian Zimmerman, the co-trustees, and that we would be the ones who decide how the money is spent every year. And that's been one of the great gifts in my life, that I've been acted as the president of the foundation since. And with Jane and Brian, I think we've done a lot of good. Our logo is a tree. And what we try to do is we try to make grants that we think are going to grow, that people are going to be able to not just use the money, but that money will be used for something that will help people in the future fend for themselves in a better way. That's what we do, a lot of economic empowerment type of stuff, a lot of coming out of poverty, things like that. And we try to support organizations that we look at almost like a stock. We want that stock to appreciate. So we want our grants to appreciate because they're going to do more and more good for people.
Many charities probably don't get this opportunity or maybe even understand the way it works as far as a certain foundation here that is providing these grants year in, year out to certain charities that fit the criteria. So the criteria now for the Herbert M. Citrin Foundation and the grants they provide, what is that criteria?
Well, one thing I learned early on, I won't give the name of the organization, but there was a major cultural organization that we gave a grant because Herb wanted us to give a grant. He was involved in this organization, and we gave them $500,000. And I said to them, well, can we have a plaque in Herb's name? And they said, no, for a plaque, you got to give $1 million. And it made me think, well, we're kind of a small foundation. We're not the Rockefeller Foundation or the Gates Foundation. So, if we're giving grants, and our grants are generally in the area of $50,000, sometimes 25, sometimes 75, but in that range, it's going to have a greater impact, and we want to have an impact if we're giving it to smaller organizations. So we tend not to give grants so much to large charities. We tend to find the smaller charities where if they get an extra $50,000, that's going to make an impact on their ability to help people and to go forward. So our number one criteria that we look at is that. And then we don't give grants generally to be used just for general corporate purposes. We want to know what the money is going to be used for. And the areas that we focus on, because there's such a tremendous amount of need in areas, so we're rather small, so we have to focus on areas, are economic empowerment, hunger, the special needs, are all areas that we're heavily involved in. That's not to say that it's exclusive. We also help people in art enrichment. We've paid for or given grants for people or organizations to go into schools where they don't have arts programs and music programs, and to provide those programs of enrichment for those kids. Because under our theory, we want kids to be exposed to that, particularly kids in underprivileged areas. And we think that's going to help them grow with their personal development, and we're reaching a lot of people from that. So those are the areas we look at. We have given grants in other areas, but not because there's not need in other areas, but because of our size. That's kind of what we focus on right now. Although I do have a project that we're going to try to get off the ground that we're working on, that I'm excited with, the MBA Alumni Association. But that's what we basically do.
Yeah, truly amazing. Somebody like you now, as this has become a new mission for your life, as you mentioned, it's something that gives you a lot of satisfaction. I'm sure you probably enjoy this process maybe more than being a lawyer day in, day out.
One thing it's done is that, when you're a lawyer and I'm calling someone else, it's calling someone up, it's, oh no, or he wants a bill paid, or he wants something from me. But when I'm calling up as the president of the Citrin Foundation, they get on the phone. I get looked at in a different way, and that's nice. And it's a special gift that Herb gave to Jane and Brian and myself. And there's nothing better than to know that you've helped people better their lives and maybe society. And it has been truly one of the great gifts of my life.
Yeah, and we've been very fortunate to work with you. And I can tell you the experience of working with you let's say we're doing a golf outing. Your law firm, let's say, might take a sponsorship. Then the foundation will donate money, either a donation or a sponsorship. And then you have friends that will get involved, and maybe other organizations that you help will get involved and maybe contribute or attend the event. It's really sort of an amazing community that you've created around this foundation and the great work that you do.
Well, that's not so much about the foundation. That's more about how my philosophy of business and law. It's more that I've always felt that the way to be successful in any business is to have a network of people that you trust and that you value and that you respect, and you help them and they help you. And to me, networking is critical for the growth of my business, Gets Fitzpatrick, and for, frankly, any business, particularly service businesses, but any business. And while I've been, I think, helpful and to a lot of these people have been very helpful to me. And without having a formal networking group, we, I think, have helped ourselves a lot, helped each other a lot, and also helped a lot of charities. So when I reach out to these people, or they reach out to me because they have their own charitable endeavors, they're there for me, and I'm there for them, and that puts me in a position, and a lot of them are very successful. That puts me in a position of being able to raise a lot of money. It also puts me in a position that when they have their charitable endeavors, I'm going to be there also. So it's not, personally, there's an expense, but it's an expense that I love, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
It's a great philosophy to have. Teamwork, a reciprocal relationship between the people that you network with. So important. I believe in that myself and our business, with our relationships with our team members and partners and vendors. Let's talk about our advertiser. I usually record and edit this podcast in my home office. And when I work, I need to get in the zone. For me, I feel more productive when I wear a collared shirt, but you're crazy if you think I'm going to put on a heavy cotton button-down shirt. I need to be comfortable if I'm working for a long period of time. Recently, through a friend of mine, I got connected to this new brand called Tillinger. They make my new favorite polo shirt. It's soft, breathable, and uses higher quality performance fabric, so I'm more comfortable. Work in it, golf in it, play in it, anything you want. No logo either, so you don't look like you just got off the golf course. Right now, they're donating 10% of every purchase to COVID-19 relief. I can't recommend them enough. Their website is shoptillinger.com. That's shop, TILLINGER.com. Check them out. You and I have worked on many events, and actually events that maybe the foundation wanted to underwrite, where we're going to put on an event and the foundation was going to allow an opportunity for maybe a smaller organization to raise money at a fundraising event.
Yeah, that's correct. I always love working with you, and frankly, I love golf events. Gets people out there. I get to meet new people. I get to show what a lousy golfer I am. But it's a lot of fun, and when you can have a good time and help a lot of people, and I think you do that at golf events. That's a win-win for everybody. And I always look forward to any golf. I know if it's a golf event planning event, it's not only going to be well run, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to run on time. And I have a lot of great memories over the years. And I say that like that time's over, but I'm hoping they're coming back after 2020. A lot of great memories of events that we've done, that we've worked on together, and things that have happened in the entertainment.
Most important thing about these memories, like you're talking about maybe some of our events, but I mean, we're the event planners and maybe the company that's going to make you have a good time that day and really sort of provide this event experience. But it's an individual like you that's bringing in the fundraising dollars, that you can't do these events without good fundraising.
Well, there's a lot of elements. I mean, you can't do these events also without someone like you running the events. You can't do these events without having a cause that people are going to find that are worthy of their time and donating. And you have to be able to identify the people who are going to be touched and be interested in these events. I mean, everyone has a different philosophy as to charity, and some people are interested in charities because it affects a particular family member, maybe a disease or an illness or something like that, and some because they just philosophically believe that society needs to take care of certain things. You know, I personally have the belief that we can't rely on government for supporting all of the needs of the underprivileged, and people have to step up. And a lot of large foundations like the Gates Foundation and such have stepped up. But it can't be just those companies. It's smaller foundations and individuals who have been successful in life have to step up. And it's not a matter of paying higher taxes or lower taxes. It's just the right thing to do. And if you can do it, believe me, you get a lot more out of it than it cost you. Because when you can better someone's life, I remember I gave a grant to a theater organization to train kids, to give them theater classes for kids that ordinarily would not be able to be even exposed to that. I had one girl come over to me and say how it's changed her life. She was introverted, and how now she get out the world. She's not going to be necessarily a big star, but it's changed the way that she reacts with people, and it's taken her out of her shell. And that she wanted to personally thank me, and that meant the world to me. And that's those kind of things that make me want to do more of those type of things.
Yeah, that has to be so gratifying when you hear those stories, and that's why you do what you do. That's why it means so much to you, and there's a certain passion that it requires. From your perspective, as we go back to what you were just talking about, what do you feel makes for a successful golf event? What are the key elements? Venue, food, experience, fundraising, committee, etc.
Okay, in terms of, I'm going to go from least important to most important. Least important is probably the venue. Most golf courses in Westchester, Long Island are nice. Some are better, but I don't think having to spend to get, I'll take Wingfoot, which is, one of the great golf courses, in the area.
Like the Creek or...
Yeah, those, I don't think that's necessary because of the cost involved in terms of the bang for the buck kind of thing. I prefer to use, I don't call it a more modest, maybe is the proper word.
Like your standard country club, but I do believe it has to be private. I think we both agree on that.
Because that's not what's motivating the people. The most important thing is you got to get the people there. I mean, I know that we've had conversations that people have approached you about doing outings, and it's all great. I remember there was one particular animal charity that had never done an outing that approached you. And the question was, well, how many people can you get to come to the outing? And they didn't know. And if in a golf outing, you would think, I think you need at least 15 to 18 foursomes to be successful. But if you're going to have 2 or 3, there's no purpose to it. And you've got to know that you can bring out the people. So the most important thing is bringing the people to the event, because if you're not going to bring the people to the event, you're not going to raise any money. It's going to cost you more money than you're going to raise because everyone has minimums
and something you always say that's very important are the sponsors, are getting good, reputable sponsors.
Right. Well, you got right. And the way that you get people to an event is that you've got to have something to entice them. And one of the things is sponsors. If you can't get the right sponsors, you're not going to raise a lot of money. Even if you get people to come to the golf event basically is almost break even in most cases. What you're charging for the foursome and the overall fixed cost of that, that's not where you're going to make the money. You may be breaking even. That's how you attract people there. But with the sponsorships, you're making money. With the auction items, with the things that you do beyond just playing golf, that's where the charity is going to differentiate itself from being small, being a small winner in terms of money and being a big winner. And, you're always helpful with that. You have your own connections that you always notify. I know that I always hear of golf outings, which I'm not involved in, that you are, and sometimes I make it a point to get to them. But that's why it's important to have the overall event. It's more than just playing golf. And I know that you look at it that way, and you have people that you work with who do the auctions and do the
you need
dinners and the
great
entertainment.
items for people to purchase.
Right.
Maybe it's a couple of foursomes to private country clubs, or maybe some of the the higher end, maybe overnight stays, or a travel package. Obviously, not thinking of COVID right now, but in a normal pre-COVID world where travel was not even a thought, those items there would definitely get bid on. But what about the goodie bags? I know you've put together some great goodie bags in the past and different items. How about some of those items?
Well, part of it is you want the participants to have a good experience, to go away. And I think that the goodie bag, whether it's I know that you do something with Nike where they get a certain amount of Nike gear, they get a gift certificate, and they can pick out what they want, or however it is. Whatever you're giving them, you have to give them something, because that's going to make them feel that they're getting something for their money, but more importantly, that they're going to be feeling good about the event. So when you're trying to get them to, I'll call it upsell. I don't know if that's the proper word for a charity, but when you want them to buy mulligans, or you want them to buy auction items, you want people to feel that they're in a good frame of mind and that they've had a good time. And part of the good time, I mean, not everyone's going to get a hole in one, but or have a great round of golf. But part of the good time is that overall experience, that the food was good, and they've met some interesting people, and they've gotten something nice, whether it's a pair of shoes or a golf shirt or whatever it is. So we try to put together a nice goodie bag, and I try to also look at it in terms of, well, there's sponsorship. So if I have a client in a particular industry who I'll get him to do his shirts, logo his shirts, and put his shirts in. I know my law firm has done that. We use our logoed shirts, and we get people to use it as something that's helps advertise their business. I know that one thing that I think you were the first one that I've seen do it. I don't know the only one who does it, but you get participants. There was a company, I can't think of the name of the company, but they make a Bloody Mary mix. There was a guy.
Yeah, Murph's Bloody Mary mix, a lot of different vendors on the course, things like that.
Yeah. And they'd come, they'd be able to expose themselves. People would be exposed to and it's a terrific product. We'd make the great Bloody Mary mix. And you'd have him, and you'd have other people like that to be able to expose their products to people who are basically
they're purchasers.
They're purchases. They're people with some means. There are a lot of businesses that want to be exposed to these people. So if you have 400 or 500 of these people, that are going to be at an event, and what you've been good at is getting these sponsorships to come. There's the sponsor that's sponsoring just to have something logo, and there's others because they want their product.
Yeah, it's targeted advertising for these companies,
and that's an important part of an event that's going to do very well, because there's no additional charge to the event, and it actually helps raise money. So that's something that helps raise money. But I tell you, and I don't say this, you're not the only one who does great at golf events, although you're the one that I prefer to deal with. Without having a good golf event plan, if you try to do it on your own, I've went to a few of those, and they've just not done well. You need someone who's going to be focused on the event. You can't be the head of the event and running it, and have the staff and being able to do what has to be done. So it's important. It is a critical part of it to have someone who's running it, who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, even if you have the other aspects of it, it's just going to be too discoordinated.
Well, thank you, Howard. I appreciate you saying that. And, honestly, I feel it's very true, because just what you detailed about the day, between the goodie bag, the various on-course sponsors or advertisers that'll come and And whether it's the Bloody Mary bar or the beer tasting, or maybe it's a Tito's station at the turn. So you're creating this experience, and then it's the auction items. Maybe we're doing a live auction or an ask at the dinner. Maybe we're doing a journal, a digital journal, all these different fundraising aspects along with the raffle baskets. It's like you're putting on a carnival all day. I mean, there's so many activities going on that you really need a full team to manage all these extra activities. It's not just about the golf.
Right. And you want to make sure that it's running smoothly. I mean, one thing that you do that some event planners don't do is you have this check-in that runs seamlessly, that you have, you do it electronically, that people can check in. The last thing you want is people to get there and be waiting on long lines to go check in. And then you have to have them write that all the information and get everything done. But you want it moving, and that the check-in that you do is one of the best. And it also is a perk for the charity, because now they electronically have a record of the people that have come to the event and who's come to the event and who's interested. Right?
What we're doing now with our Event Hub digital check-in is some events, they require a waiver to be signed off on. So the waiver will pop up on their phone before they check in, and they can check in on their mobile device, so they're not getting to a table and there's a long line. In this COVID world, you really want to prevent these gatherings and long lines and different clusters of people. And in addition to that, is some of these events are now doing drop ships for, maybe it's a shirt or a shirt size, and we haven't received the shirt size of all the golfers. But when they check in, they get their shirt size right into the system. And now their address is in there, and a golf shirt or a rain suit or whatever the item is can be drop shipped to their door.
That's a great idea. I mean, that's the kind of thing that even becomes more important in a post-COVID world, because you got to figure out how to do this. It's, COVID has made us think about things we never had to think about before. With the social distancing and how we're going to how are we going to, get the logistics of how we're going to do this, and I know that you think about those things.
Obviously the event world has been dark now for quite some time, and to try to pivot and think of new ways to put on an event responsibly and keep people safe and socially distant and from not getting sick. It's very important to think about those things and to execute them properly. As far as the foundation, you guys would usually do these in-person grant proposals in January. Is that something that you've now maybe pivoted a little and maybe that's gone virtual?
Yeah, I think that in January, we've been talking about it a little bit. Our deadline for grant proposals is usually around Thanksgiving, and that's probably going to stay the same when we do our grants in January. But we're probably going to let people do their presentation, which we're still going to have, but do it in a Zoom setting where we have the documents in front of us, and we do it virtually. And frankly, that's how the world is changing. I can't think of a reason why I need someone in person. Before, I would say I need to be able to shake hands with the person and look them in the eyes. Well, I could look them in the eye. I can't shake hands with them, but I could look them in the eye. And it's cheaper and I guess more effective. And I'm not so sure, people ask me, well, when COVID is over, are things going to go back the way they were? And I don't think, not totally. I think a lot of this virtual world has accelerated to such an extent that I'm not going to be going on a plane to go see a client in LA anymore. I'm going to just Zoom with the person, which probably would have happened in 5 or 6 years anyway, but it's accelerated it because it's just more cost effective. Instead of me having to spend thousands of dollars between hotels and airfare and legal time just to get to the person, we can have a Zoom and do it much more efficiently, which always was the case. And I think the world was getting to that point, but but some things you can't do virtually. I don't think you can do charitable fundraising. To me, requires that personal touch. I don't think that in the charitable world, in the philanthropy world, you can do it virtually and have the same effect. I can't do a virtual golf outing. And if I'm not doing a golf outing, or I'm not doing something, some dinner or something where I'm with someone and they're getting to experience it as a group, it's not going to have the same impact in terms of them giving. I don't think. So some things it works. It works in my business, but I don't think it works in the philanthropic world as well. And we have to get back to having personal contact.
So the time that we air this episode, you'll be almost a week away from your first golf event of the year on October 19th.
Yeah.
So what's that event and what's the cause?
Yeah, it's something called the Sisters of Charity. Ed Serlin, who's a managing director of Signature Bank, is involved with them and asked me to come. And then right after that, after I committed to that, I found out, I think through you, that the Mid-Island JCC, or the Suffolk JCC, was having an event. And frankly, I'm involved with the Mid-Island JCC, and they have a fantastic president, for executive director, Rick Lewis. And I would love to come to the event. And if I wasn't committed, I know that event is a great event. And certainly when I know it's a golf event planning event, I would certainly want to go. And I'm kind of bummed that I'm not going to be able to make it this year. And it's just ironic that I've had no golf outings all year. And the one time I do, I have a conflict. But that's where
you and I have not figured out how to clone ourselves just yet.
Right.
But yeah, I understand that, you get involved with so many different organizations, and obviously this year events being postponed that might have been earlier in the year. And if it's a golf event, we only have a couple of more weeks here, and then the weather changes dramatically. So you are going to
I will be taking a sponsorship to that event, Larry. I'll tell you that. You can tell Rick I am going to take a sponsorship, but I physically can't. I think my wife is going to go to the dinner part of it.
So your wife is also involved on the fundraising side.
That's true. She's not a fundraiser. What she does is she's with the UJA, United Jewish Appeal, and she helps foundations as an advisor to their giving, and for several foundations to different types of charities. And so she's been involved in the philanthropic world. She also likes to advise me as to good charities for me to look out for, the Citrin Foundation to give money to. But she's been involved in helping the charities use the money wisely rather than the raising of the money aspect of it. That's her function.
That's great, and that's so important too. And you both get involved with so many different types of charities and events, but it's not just golf outings; it's also galas and different events. Correct?
Oh yeah, there's not. I mean, golf outings are a seasonal thing. We're all year long looking to do different types of events and different charities, and it's frankly because my business is based on networking. Part of it is business related. I meet some great people, and potentially sometimes I meet some clients. I've certainly gotten some business from it, but it's not my primary focus. I learn about great charities, and then I try to figure out how can I help them. Sometimes it's through the foundation. Sometimes it's through an introduction that I could make to them that because I have a wide variety of people in so many different industries that might be helpful to them in what they're doing. So yeah, I enjoy it very much. I enjoy the events, golf events. I love, but it's not the only kind of event we do.
Yeah, it's definitely a passion of yours. There's no doubt. I mean, I know you for, like I said, 12 years now, and you're always working with a different organization, trying to help them succeed with their fundraising campaigns. I really appreciate your time today, Howard. As we wrap up here, I want to just end on one specific note. If an organization's out there listening right now, maybe they don't have a golf outing, or maybe they need to improve their golf outing, what would you suggest they do to get started?
Well, the first thing I would suggest that they do is that they contact you, because you can tell them
Thank you.
what they need to do to make a successful golf outing. They have to have an idea of how many golfers they could bring. They have to have an idea of what their budget's going to be. They have to have an idea of who in their organization is going to be on the committee, and whether those people on the committee are people that can bring sponsorships, bring golfers. You can't just have a committee. It's nice. Anyone could be on a committee, but you need a committee to help, the event to work. I mean, I know that my wife and we're honorees, usually once every other year, and I won't do it for an organization more than once every other year because while they call it I'm the honoree, it's really I'm responsible, because if I'm the honoree or if I'm on the committee for someone else who's a friend who's the honoree, that's a responsibility that I'm taking on, the task of making sure that I can bring the value that the committee has to bring to make an event successful. This means I'm going to be making the calls. I'm going to be figuring out what we need and how do we get there from what we need. So they need someone like you that can tell them this is what their goal is, this is what they want to get to, and what they need to have as resources, or what they have to get as resources in order to reach that goal. So that's usually the best starting point, because if you've never done an event before, you don't know what you need. And you need someone like Golf Event Planning to tell you what has to be the expectations. Because if you can't make those expectations, and I know we've had discussions about people who've come to you and said, we want to do a golf outing, and that's wonderful. And they expect, just because they want to do a golf outing, that's all they got to do. They'll hire you and that's it. And that's not how it works. Don't think about having a golf outing unless you have a committee that's going to be able to bring golfers, that's going to be able to bring sponsors, because otherwise you're going to spend money to hire the venue, which is not inexpensive, and you could lose money. I mean, there are golf outings that actually lose money. It's not a sure thing. And the only way you make it a sure thing is to know ahead of time what you can get projections from your committee members. So what Larry's good at is that Larry is able to give you an idea of what those expectations are. And then you have to decide whether you can meet those expectations. You have the resources to do that.
Well, thank you, Howard. And it's true. You do have to have specific goals, and you need to understand the undertaking that is involved with having a golf outing. And you and I have talked many times, this isn't just a 2-3 week or 2-3 month process. I mean, it's a process that it's 5, 6, 7 months away from the event that you have to start really meeting, getting your committee together, setting your goals, your sponsorship structure long in advance, so that when you're able to get the promotional materials out to the golfers, you already have your goals set.
One tip that I would give people that I've found to be successful in the auction part of it is the type of auction item that is the most valuable, that'll get the best return, are the ones that don't have a fixed value. In other words, if you have an autographed football from Joe Montana, that's going to have a fixed value. But if you have lunch with Joe Montana, well, that will go for a lot more money, because that's something that can't be valued. So a lunch with someone who's a great financial wizard would be something of great value, or an author of a book that they can bring a few people. I know my wife loved it. She's had a few authors that she's bought luncheons with, and that's a great gift. I know at one event I had Dr. Ruth went to dinner with 3 or 4 people.
I remember that.
At Sardi's, and that was like, people are talking about that for a long time. And those type of things, one thing I always love is if you get an author, if you have a good connection with an author, authors need names to put in their novels if they're novelists, and you can auction off the right to have your name in the novel. You don't know what the space is going to be, but that it gives you somewhat of immortality. Those are fantastic auction items. So when you're thinking of items and things that you're going to auction off for money, try to think a little outside the box. Think of things that are more invaluable, that you can't just go into a store and buy, than the standard fare. Because if people are going to golf outings, you're going to see a picture of, Yogi Berra autographed on every single golf outing. But you're not going to see the type of invaluable object, invaluable experiences that will get people to remember the outing and differentiate what you're offering from somebody else.
Great insight, Howard. We've been talking with Howard Rubin, partner at Getz Fitzpatrick and the trustee of the Herbert M. Citrin Foundation, talking about his perspective on fundraising and what it takes to run a successful charity event, especially a charitable golf outing. And that's so important, Howard, is to think outside the box and come up with these great experiences instead of just maybe the typical item you see in a frame that, you might see, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 different events. But if you can come up with some unique items for people to bid on or put their raffle tickets in, that's probably going to be a more successful way to raise more money.
Maybe even lunch with Larry Battaglia. we can auction that off, and he can tell you his experiences and
yeah, I'm not sure that would go for too much, but
I'm telling you,
we can throw it out there.
Larry, you've told me some great stories about what's happened to some of these golf outings. Having lunch with you and hearing these stories, that's got to be. I'd bid on that. I think
so. That does bring me to another topic, as we are sort of ending here. But not only have you and I discussed sort of a reality show around this business, because there are so many stories that we come across in the event planning world that you wouldn't even think. You just think it's real simple and okay, you get to the event and everything looks great, but the journey does take you down some interesting roads that maybe you never realized you would have to experience. It's so true. So you and I do have some funny stories. And speaking of laughs, Howard, you have a little bit of a comedic background. I think you've actually been on stage at Governor's a few times with a little different side to Howard Rubin.
I enjoy getting up on stage, and I took some course on comedy college and started writing my own material. And I not just at Governor's, but some places in the city. I do it for charities. Of course, then my friends come and they're willing to pay to see me, and they do use it mostly for charity events. Although I've done a couple that aren't charity events. You're getting up on stage and you don't know who's going to be in the audience. It's always a challenge. I had one recently in a club in the city, and
it was about 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I had this one. No, this was only about a year ago, I think, just before COVID, and I had some material at the beginning that was a little bit blue. And I'm looking out in the front, and there was like 3 nuns in the front row. And I said, well, am I going to use this material? And I used the material, and they're the ones that laughed the hardest. And so you never know who your audience is.
Well, definitely fun and exciting and always interesting in your world between your career and now your mission in life with the Herbert M. Citrin Foundation, but also the softer side with the comedy background now, and also lends to your network, as you mentioned earlier, brings people closer together, and that's what you believe in.
Right. Yes, that's correct.
So, Howard, I can't thank you enough today for spending some time with me and talking about your experiences in the philanthropy event planning world and our relationship together, as well as some good ideas and insight for anyone out there looking to host a charitable golf outing. Again, we've been talking with Howard Rubin, the partner at Getz Fitzpatrick law firm in New York City, as well as trustee of the Herbert M. Citrin Foundation. And Howard, hopefully you're going to have good weather on the 19th of October when you get out there and play. Probably the first time of the year, at least in an event, as we spoke about. But hopefully we'll be able to get together in 2021 at some golf outings and sort of get back to a little bit of a normal event planning world.
Looking forward to it, Larry. And my pleasure.
Say hi to your wife for us. And again,
here.
We hope you enjoy this episode.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Fairways in Fundraising podcast, powered by Gulf Event Planning. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review.